Today, we're diving into one of the most fundamental questions of faith, one that sits at the very core of how we relate to God. What is He really like? We'll be looking at a teaching that helps us move our understanding of God away from something rooted in fear and toward a foundation of love.
And let's just start with the question that really gets to the heart of it, a question a lot of us have probably wrestled with. Is God angry with me? It's that nagging thought that can create so much doubt and distance in our spiritual lives.
For generations, this idea of a wrathful, angry God has been a really powerful force in shaping Christian thought. It has dictated how people approach God, and more often than not, it has fostered a relationship built more on fear than on genuine faith and love.
So, this perception of an angry God is identified as a core problem. It's a distorted view that has some pretty significant and often damaging consequences for believers.
This whole framework, it was really popularized by those fiery sermons from the past. You know the type. What it does is it fosters a relationship where you're just trying to appease a deity who seems perpetually displeased. The analysis here reveals that faith just can't function properly when you misunderstand God. And unfortunately, this angry God image has often been used as a tool for manipulation and control.
Okay, so if that's the problem, what's the solution? Where do we turn? Well, the analysis pivots to what's presented as the ultimate key for understanding God's true nature, the person of Jesus Christ.
And here is the central thesis of the whole teaching. Jesus is presented as the university of God for all of humanity. He's the full curriculum, the perfect, visible image of the invisible God. So if you want to know what God the Father is really like, you have to look at the Son.
So let's look at the evidence. How did Jesus respond when he was faced with the ultimate betrayal, hostility, and violence? It was shown from Scripture that he didn't call down fire from heaven, he asked for forgiveness for his executioners. When he was attacked during his arrest, he performed an act of healing. His actions, consistently, time and again, define God's character as restorative, not retributive.
And this wasn't just in his actions. The teaching reveals that Jesus also actively corrected long-held interpretations of Scripture to make God's true character crystal clear.
This is an absolutely perfect illustration of that. In the synagogue, Jesus stood up and read from the prophet Isaiah, but he stopped, right in the middle of a sentence. He proclaimed all the good news, liberty, favor, but he deliberately left out the one phrase his audience was waiting to hear, and the day of vengeance of our God.
Now that was a profound theological statement. By editing the prophecy in real time, Jesus was teaching that he did not come to bring divine vengeance. This was a radical correction, and it enraged the crowd who was expecting a Messiah that would destroy their enemies for them.
Okay, so this brings up a critical question, doesn't it? If God isn't angry, then what about the wrath of God we read about in Scripture, especially in the book of Romans? The study explains that God's wrath isn't an active emotional outburst from Him. Instead, it's presented as a passive process. It starts when humanity suppresses the truth. In response, God honors their choice and gives them up. And the natural consequence of that separation, that absence of God, is the biblical concept of wrath.
The original Greek word used here is paradidomi. It literally means to hand something over, to deliver it into the power of another. This isn't an act of punishment. It's an act of God respecting our consent. He allows people the freedom to choose a path away from Him if that's what they truly want.
So getting this distinction is absolutely crucial. The common idea of divine anger is an active punishment coming from God, but the biblical concept of wrath is presented here as a passive consequence of our own human choices, kind of like the darkness that naturally shows up when you turn off a light.
And once you grasp this shift in understanding, the implications are just profound. It can liberate believers from a relationship defined by fear and open the way to a life founded on love and trust.
It was shown from Scripture that God's very nature is one of absolute, unchanging goodness. He's called the Father of lights, and the idea is that He's incapable of producing darkness or evil. Just like a light source can't create a shadow inside itself, there's simply no variation in His good character.
So let's be perfectly clear. According to this teaching, the amount of darkness, evil, or variability in God's character is zero, a flat 0%. He is the very definition of good, and only good can proceed from Him.
And all of this leads to the essential takeaway, the bottom line. A real relationship with God isn't founded on the fear of his anger, but on the secure, confident assurance of his unchanging love, a love that we see perfectly and completely revealed in Jesus. And that leaves us with a final reflective question. If God is not angry with you, but is completely for you, unchanging in his goodness and his love, how does that truth set you free?